Right. Hello, this is Black Thought. I'm Dr. Hutchinson, and as you can see, we have the world famous, world traveler, world musician, Mr. Kirk Whalum with us, and he is here over at THOUGHT-STAX, the CEO, and we're at this marvelous festival called THOUGHT to the Max. So glad to be here in your presence.
It is my pleasure. Always an honor. I teasingly call you the mayor of Soulsville, but I don't know. We may have to create a position since you're already doing the work. And I am CCO. I'm Chief Creative Officer.
Okay.
Which more or less I am here to inspire the kids and allow them to sort of interact with someone who's in the industry, and also to advise this great music staff that we have here. And they have already knocked the ball out of the park today with the performance of the middle schoolers. And you would think that some of these kids were in high school, 11, 12, 13 year olds. But here's the thing that we find is that when you present before them, when you set the mark high in front of them, when you create a culture of striving, a culture of progress, and really just trying to achieve, a culture of achievement, these kids respond, man. And it doesn't matter. I think people say, well, yeah, that's a poor neighborhood, though. There's a lot of violence, whatever. No, if you put that there, they will reach for it, and they will outperform anything, all of your expectations. They're gonna reach above that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, because that leads me to this question. Talk to us about the interaction between the students and some of the legendary THOUGHT artists who are able to create some of the music, because I know a lot of the things you do, you include all genres of R&B, you touch on some jazz, all of that, but one of the greatest things is for them to be in, I guess, for lack of a better term, master classes with the greats. Talk to us about that.
That is huge. I mean, you could go all the way back to the African tradition of passing on culture, verbally. Things weren't written down, and so this oral culture has been a very big thing, for us as Black people long before we came to these shores. And then what we get to do with these legacy artists, many of whom are not only still alive, but they're still thriving, and William Bell is still touring, the world. They're able to go to the source. They see the videos, they hear the recordings, and they hear how awesome that music was, even without the benefit of what these kids have, in terms of resources, in terms of connections, and pedagogy, the studying, the formal study of music theory and those things. A lot of those musicians did not have that, but they still achieved a lot, and the music sounded great. They had this one important element called teamwork, that the kids get to see how that works, that when you're working together for a common goal, you can accomplish more than you would on your own. Well, they get to go to the horse's mouth, to the actual source of that, this great THOUGHT legacy, to talk to the Barcades, who they love coming over here and talking to, the Mad Lads, the staple singers have been here. That is a hook that's unique to this experience that we're able to capitalize on, which is beautiful.
I want you to talk about something else. I know that we're here in Memphis, we're Memphians, I'm a transplant.
That's right.
You're a native, but I've been here 18 years, I'm a Memphian.
That's right.
We sometimes take for granted what we have in our city. What I want you to do now is just talk about the musical history of this neighborhood, because we sit on the site where THOUGHT Records was, but just a few blocks away was where High Records was.
That's right, a great album.
And then Earth, Wind and Fire went to BTW, the Nucleus event. Right. They lived within walking distance of where we sit. Yeah. We're looking at Memphis Slim's home on the other side of where we sit. Aretha Franklin was born within walking distance of this place. Talk to us about that and kind of rehearse that for us, because a lot of people take for granted what this neighborhood has brought to the world.
That's so true, and I'll even add to that list Jimmy Lunsford, the great big band director, who really changed the game when it comes to the presentation of this music, of the jazz music of the 30s and 40s, where he added this showbiz element that arguably you could say that is very much a big part what you see when you saw the arcades and you saw the presentation of the Stax artists. That came a lot from Jimmy Lunsford and what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They said, yes, you have to be excellent at the instrument, but you also have to realize you have an audience out there, many of whom they don't know a B flat from a hole in the wall. So you have to create a presentation that captivates their attention and that engages them. So those are things that came right out of this neighborhood. And I think that there's another thing too. When I think about Metropolitan Church in particular, and of course,
I was going to mention that. Go right there.
Absolutely. Your great church and many other churches in this neighborhood, is that, that has been an unspoken sort of nucleus, breeding ground for a lot of these great musicians, that, including myself, that the first forum that we had to really present our talents and to develop our talents was right there in the pulpit as opposed to on the stage. And that's still true today. And it's something that I wonder if the black church in particular even realizes, by and large, how much of a contribution that they have made and are making to the world of creativity and creative talent, that these kids, many of them come straight out of church. And in this neighborhood, I think it may be a little bit more serious that they took it seriously. There was a synergy between those churches and the Booker T. Washington, the Manassas out south, and so there was both working towards the same thing, where there was a spiritual underpinning. But then, these band directors were not playing around, and the choir directors, you had to know the music because they knew that they had to be just that much better to be taken seriously by culture at large. So it's a special neighborhood. This Soulsville.
And want to say this to you: this country and this world owes a lot to the musical legacy that has come from this neighborhood. If we started dropping names, we would be here for the length of this show. Believe me when I tell you. When we start talking about Herbert Brewster, when we start talking about the Newman brothers, when we start talking about, I'm thinking
the Tiny, the Grimes and all those.
Yeah.
Just a lot of musical families.
That's right.
The McKinney family, just so many great families that have produced great.
And I'm thinking of the jazz pianist. I think his last name was Williams. From here in Memphis. We have a whole host of people that have come from the soil of this neighborhood.
James Williams.
That's it.
And he lives in New York in your neighborhood. Until it's done.
Yeah. And so when you start thinking about what this neighborhood is giving to the world, not only in music, but in civil rights, other areas, then you start to see the awesome legacy that we have right here in Memphis, Tennessee. But let me go to this before I forget. Stax to the Max. Talk about its focus, its genesis, what you're trying to do with it, because that's what brings us here today. And we're trying to end this as soon as possible because there's a lot going on outside of where we are right now.
Right, and I will be one of them in a few minutes to go out there and play. But Stax to the Max began as we decided instead of having a big fundraiser at, say, the Cannon Center, a big concert at GPAC or something, that we would allow the kids to perform right here on campus. And I have to give credit to Mark Winder, our CEO. At the time, he was the one that really said, man, what would it be like if we just did it here? And I immediately said, man, that's a stroke of genius, because not only is it, from the inside out, an opportunity for the kids to showcase what they've been working on, but it's a great opportunity for the neighborhood to take ownership and take pride and perhaps know a little bit more about what's going on in these buildings over here. Even the museum, a lot of these folks have not been in there. And so during this Stax to the Max, they can go in for a couple of dollars and experience the museum. And so all in all, a big part of it was for that community outreach and to allow the folks in this neighborhood who deserve to have the best of entertainment, to be entertained, have fun, and to take pride, take ownership in what belongs to them.
That's a marvelous thing. Last thing. I don't know if many people know this. I don't know if you've even said it publicly, but talk to us. And I know you come from a musical family.
Yes,
first of all, before I even go there.
Yes, sir.
Connected with Metropolitan Church, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes,
but
sir.
Talk to us. What made you make the decision to get into music? and to find out what your gift was and develop it and become the person we know today. Talk to us a little bit about that.
There is absolutely a sort of inertia that takes place when someone like myself, and I'm certainly not alone, there are plenty of us. I'll say Paul McKinney is another good example, speaking of this neighborhood. When we first start out as little kids, and that music seed has been planted, long before we even realize it, that there's not about a matter of deciding, I think I might try being a musician. It's about figuring out what's the best way for me to get there. There's an instrument over here. Let me see, can I go climb up on the organ at church and play that, beat on the drum? It's just you're figuring how to get there, because in you is this thing called music, and it's a calling. It's not about a vocational choice. I would have chosen many other things, probably if I had known, but at the same time, I really wouldn't. I'm so grateful to be able to participate in this great thing that belongs to God. It's creativity, it all belongs to Him. It's something that God has and God's infinite wisdom and I don't know, and just His love for His creation, for God's creation, for us to be able to have this thing called music and to have people, even families, generations, who have a natural, affinity for it. I have right in this neighborhood, on this ground that where we are now, my grandfather raised 4 boys and a girl, and all of them love music, and even beyond that immediate family, music has been a part of my tree. And I think about my Uncle Peanuts, who's 84, who still sounds great. He was born and raised on this property, and when I invited him to be a part of my my live recordings and some other recordings, it's an honor for me to say to the world, I'm not the first Whalum that played saxophone, And then when I present my nephew, who is now traveling the world, playing with, Jay-Z, and playing with Maxwell, and the other one playing with Bruno Mars and the Jonas Brothers, and my son is out touring with a country artist named Billy McCurd. Billy Currington. It's amazing to me to think that you find your place and try to make sure that you are diligent. It's a due diligence with what you've been given, but know that it's not just you. So you want to look back and say that you passed the ball on well, that you leave some kind of legacy. And where that concerns Stax, I'm constantly sort of finding the best way for me to contribute, because the caveat is that I've traveled, and I sort of my life and career, my calling have led to this season where now I was in Japan until Thursday, and then before that I was in South Africa, and then I'm going to Europe, and so for me, I have to find the best way for me to contribute, not disruptively, because there's a sort of, with kids you need to have consistency. So we have an amazing staff here. What I do is I get a chance to inspire the kids, hopefully, and even the staff, to advise them, and sometimes say, you should try maybe this instead of that. But it's a pleasure and an honor, and there's no place in the world like Soulsville.
Amen. Yes, amen. Sir. As a proud resident of Soulsville. But let me say this as we close. I want to thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, as great as a musician as he is, he's an even greater person. So I'm blessed by the association with you. Thank you for giving us the time. Support the Stax Museum. It is one of the greatest museums, bar none, in the entire country, and you are doing yourself a disservice if you don't come here and avail yourself of the opportunity of seeing what's here on these grounds. Come on down to Macklemore and visit. God bless. This is Black Thought, and I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson.